Hello, everyone. This is Cody Lee of BlackCatBooks.org, author of I, the Dragon, Cruel and Beautiful Rabbit Hole Lore and Frey, and the upcoming Jaw of the Dragon. I would like to take a quick trip down memory lane back to October 2022, in which a wide range of YouTubers, and particularly fans of the Devil May Cry variety, came out and called Bayonetta 3 disappointing. They called the combat uninspired, simplistic. They called the summoning basic. They thought the puzzle solving was too wasn't a whole lot of fun. This coming from Devil May Cry fans, this is all very funny. But there was a very, very real push, initially after launch to try and write off Bayonetta 3 as being disappointing, as being lesser than the Devil May Cry games. And now that it's been a couple of months, and now that I've taken the time to do things like play Devil May Cry 5 and play the follow-up to Bayonetta 3, Cereza and the Lost Demon, I think a lot of these complaints about Bayonetta 3 were so out of touch that they aren't even really worth taking seriously. I'd really like you to remember what things were like back in 2022 when the game first concluded, and people were complaining about two very specific things in regards to this, the ending and the fact that it was on Switch, right? That was the funny thing about this situation, is that so many so-called Bayonetta fans seriously got up in arms about the story, which, first of all, nobody cares about in a Bayonetta game. Nobody plays Bayonetta for the plot. But if you actually do care about the story, like I do, if you actually do know about the characters, like I do, if you have a basic understanding of the lore, like I do. Actually, I am the sort of person who goes through all the log books and stuff like that. So I have read them. I do have an understanding of, a plot deeper than the average fan. But if you do that, you do understand that what Bayonetta 3 did was in no way contrary to what the original was building up to, right? The big complaint about the ending was that oh man, Bayonetta dies having sex with a man. Ooh, the audacity. Our lesbian icon, Bayonetta, has sex with a man. She would never do that. From the very first game, she made it explicitly clear that she and John were eternal lesbian lovers. Complete fan fiction bullshit, okay? I really need to talk about this. Maybe make a top 10, but there seems to be this really weird culture around YouTubers trying to pretend that certain Nintendo characters or certain video game characters are gay. I've seen this with Naoto from Persona 4, Ike from Fire Emblem, Ike and Soren from Fire Emblem, excuse me. I've seen this from Samus Aran and the whole being trans thing, allegedly, which is laughable. And then we have Bayonetta, this completely ridiculous thing that seems to have propped up out of nowhere. This weird attempt at trying to claim this character as a LGBT icon backfired in their faces in the most hilarious way possible. We saw this, I saw this situation escalate post Bayonetta 2, in which a bunch of people who clearly were not fans really pushed this narrative that Bayonetta and Jean were a couple together, completely ignoring the lore, ignoring their friendship and how they met and stuff like that, and really pushing this idea that oh man, they're Umbran lovers, it's just ridiculous. It was completely ridiculous and absurd, even back then. But seeing seeing it be deconfirmed in such a glorious fashion in Bayonetta 3 was oddly cathartic, right? A lot of these poser fans, a lot of these imposters, the sort of person who goes on a podcast and screams that Bayonetta 3 is the 9/11 for gays. Yes, that happened. These guys just got completely destroyed. And seeing Bayonetta, Cereza and the Lost Demon come out, that really goes against the narrative that they were trying to push in the immediate aftermath of that, is that Bayonetta as a character would be retired and replaced with Viola as the protagonist of Bayonetta 4, which of course is not true. It was just something they tried pushing. So with that in mind, two of the very big complaints against Bayonetta 3, initially, that the fact that she was dead and the fact that she was with the wrong love interest, have been completely and thoroughly debunked. And the bits about the gameplay, those were always never going to stick. They were always like, made in bad faith. Like, I think people know not to take what people say about the gameplay of Nintendo games seriously at this. What people say about the gameplay of Nintendo games this seriously anymore, because there have been too many times in the past couple of years where like they've just gone all in, like trying to tell you that like, oh, Breath of the Wild, it has an empty open world. Oh, Mario Odyssey, it just there are too many collectibles. Oh, like Animal Crossing had New Horizons. It stopped getting updated. Like they throw all these like completely empty complaints out, like trying to find something that sticks. And like with Bayonetta 3, they tried saying it just wasn't very good. It wasn't a very good action game. They tried saying that like the Switch hardware was holding it back, that it wasn't had development problems, that like there was this or that like the summoning trivialized the core combat, that there was all these problems with it. But when you get right down to it, like none of those complaints really matter in the slightest. Like these people are just, trying very desperately to push an agenda. And with that in mind, when you take away like the attempts at downplaying this game from the gaming YouTubers, right, you understand like you're left with like a very popular, very successful game that sold over 1 million units, that was very well received by fans, and is clearly paving the way for a glorious new future for Platinum Games on Nintendo hardware. Like, they immediately followed this up with Cereza and the Lost Demon, which is fantastic. I cannot recommend that one enough, which, dispels any doubts that, like, the series would continue at this point. Like, I am just, like, very, very thrilled about the future of Bayonetta on Nintendo hardware, and I can't wait to see just where this goes, where the series goes from here. However, like, what exactly are, like, the detractors, like, the Bayonoters, going to do? The Bayonatters? I don't know. I just came up with that. I don't know what to call these people, but there's no denying that there is like a very dedicated group of like action game fans on other consoles that really want to see Bayonetta fail, and it is because of the Bayonetta exclusivity, right? Like they had no problem with the franchise like back when it was a multiplayer, but now that it is a Nintendo exclusive, it is a threat to like their hegemony. It is a threat to their existence. It is the video game franchise I think that like most heavily disproves the notion that Nintendo is only popular among children. And with that in mind, like, because this game exists, it is a very big threat against like the PlayStation, Xbox, PC like demographic. Like, they don't like the fact this game exists. They don't like the fact that like it destroys their narrative, their carefully cultivated narrative they've been building up like the past couple of decades. Like, this game is like a threat to them, right? Like, obviously it's not the only threat. Like, of course we have like Pokemon, we have Zelda, we have like, everything else they've been trying to go after. But like, let it be known that there was a very, 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 very big demographic of people who are trying to guarantee that Bayonetta failed. Like, let's not forget how many YouTubers, people like Angry Joe, people who had video games awesome, people who have no relationship with Bayonetta, who have like done nothing but like criticize the games for years and like attack the creators and did all sorts of things. Like these YouTubers, like in the end, after those allegations, regarding the voice actor controversy were resolved, like they completely disappeared. They didn't cover the game at all. They didn't talk about it. They tried pretending the game didn't exist, like they do with every single other major Nintendo release. Going back to playing their terrible indie games that nobody cares about. Looking at you, Fraser. This is like, disgusting. Okay, like I don't like the fact that there were so many YouTubers trying to like just attack this game. I don't like the fact that there were so many naysayers, that there was so much speculation that this game would be a flop. It clearly isn't. Platinum Games is doing better than ever, and it is entirely because of their success on Nintendo hardware.